You know, my mother told me I ought to be a farmer. My dad wanted me to be a
fantasy football player.
You're better than anyone I ever had.
I'm Floyd, and I bring the heat.
And this is Sean, the Greek.
Together, we host the Fantasy Football Forum. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forum. Of course, I'm Floyd, and he's the Greek one. How we doing, Greek?
I'm doing great, Floyd. Thanks for having me again. Back by tepid demand. Tepid demand.
So, we always go into the playoffs, and we know that something is going to happen that we don't expect, right?
Oh, yeah, every year. Never fails.
Certainly this year was no exception to that, right?
Oh, yeah. Just when you think you have it figured out, Keenan Allen goes out in the first quarter.
That's right. So tell me, just give me your take on the playoffs this year.
Well, for me, the thing that I will always remember about these playoffs was how crazy that semifinal round was. I always feel like the semifinals is that one week where you see that shootout where somebody beats someone 156 to 143. And this is the one year where I think we touched on it. Oh yeah. Yeah. And it always happens. And then there's always a team that scores more points in the semifinals than whatever happens in the championship game. You know, the championship game, from my memory, a lot of years is some weird 120 to 110 game. It's never it's just never a big shootout. It's the semifinals is where you usually get the shootout. And this year, it was hilarious. The game between It's Not a Tumor and Hog Heaven, they both finished in the 70s.
Oh, I believe there was a tweet that went out. Hog Heaven had sent a tweet that said, "We all suck." He sent that to all the teams.
Yes.
So Hog Heaven scores a 72 in the semis and gets beat with a 77.
A 77. Say it out loud. Someone scored 77 points and moved on to the finals.
We'll probably never see that again.
No, you'll never see that again. And I honestly, once It's Not a Tumor, you can't tell me. Once It's Not a Tumor scored 77 with the finals, did you not just feel like it was his year?
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously, with that said, there's so many players for him that had a down week, so you're waiting for the bounce back.
And that's a good point, too. I mean, even though he scores that 77, he's going up against, the dynasty that's Nostrashaunus. He still comes out swinging.
Oh, totally.
Had a good championship game. I mean,
yeah.
I didn't look through, but I bet he's beating most of the teams.
I guarantee he did. I believe Nostrashaunus, that was a knockout punch.
Yeah. That
was an exclamation point.
What did his final end up?
175 for Nostrashaunus.
75.
And I'm telling you right now, I don't have it in front of me, but It's Not a Tumor scored around 130.
Yeah.
For me, anytime you get over 125, you should expect to win.
Absolutely.
Right? So he scored right around 130. You put it this is fantasy football, right? 1 week you score 77 and win. The next week you score 130 and lose. That's fantasy football.
That's it. In a nutshell, that is it. So, any other just general comments on the playoffs, or your take on the playoffs, or anything else that stuck out?
Well, the only other thing I would bring up was just the amount of injuries, how much injuries came into these playoffs. And I already previously mentioned the Keenan Allen going out in the first quarter for It's Not a Tumor. Big limbs. Lost Melvin Gordon, your number one stud running back, lost Melvin Gordon. And then Nostrashaunus. I mean, you would have thought that through the playoffs, his running backs would have been James Conner and Todd Gurley. The final game, his two running backs, his starting running backs, are Philip Lindsay and some guy named Williams from Green Bay.
Wow.
So it's just amazing how much.
And back to that Melvin Gordon, I mean, even though that's only third in place that Big Limbs was ended up fighting for, but he's fighting for a spot in the money.
Oh, so $60, that's your money back.
Injury may have cost him that.
Yeah, you get third place, you played for free. At the end of the day, if you played for free, you're not too bad. So, no, it just goes to show you, you want to have a good starting 8, starting 10 for the team, but that depth on the bench you just can never realize how valuable it really is.
I looked up the payouts for the season, and of course, Nostrashaunus is going to be paid, and It's Not a Tumor will be paid, and of course, Hog Heaven will be paid in the championship rounds.
Yeah.
But also, there was a total of 9 people that won weekly totals, and it includes those 3. So there's 6 more teams that will be paid out. 9 teams total will be paid something, some sort of monetary amount.
Yes, and then the Nostrashaunus will get a payment for winning the regular season title. And then just to show you how kind of a quirky year this was, so basically you have 13 weeks, right, where you get payouts for the top, the top high scores. Nostrashaunus was the only repeat winner. Everyone else won one time.
Oh, wow.
Nostrashaunus won 5 weeks, and then everybody else was a single win.
Yeah, so, I believe I remember when we did our first episode of the season. I think Jessica's team had or no, maybe it was Chris from State Farm. One of those two had the top score at that time.
Chris from State Farm, I believe. Yeah, there's always week 1, just the way the final week 1's always weird too. You always have a team out of nowhere that scores like 150, 160 week 1. So yeah, Chris from State Farm is the one that jumped out right there. The only thing I would like to touch on lastly about the playoffs was we both made our picks.
Mm-hmm. How'd we turn out?
The Greek went 6-1.
Whoa!
Didn't have the championship game right.
Oh, that's right. You had It's Not a Tumor winning the championship.
Yes, I thought It's Not a Tumor was getting a new seat at the champions table. Floyd, the Heat, went 5-2. But for me, honestly, the Greek, looking at the Floyd had the winner though. So
the championship. Yes, I picked
the winner. So even though 6-1 versus 5-2, if you pick the winner, it's weighted a little heavier.
Juggernaut.
I think we give the crown for the bracket challenge to Mr. Floyd.
I will take check or cash.
Checks in the mail.
Alrighty. So any other kind of, I think later in the program, we've got a couple interesting interviews that we have coming in this episode. I think later in the program we'll kind of do a little bit of a recap on the season, and then going into the playoffs or going into the draft and next season. But do you have anything else on the end of this season, the playoffs, anything like that?
It was a great season. I mean, as always, a lot of things we saw coming, some things we didn't see coming. Congratulations to Nostrashaunus, 4 titles. It speaks for itself. So it was a great season. Can't lie, I would have liked to see It's Not a Tumor make it, get that first championship, but you know what? There's always next year, and I think this guy knows how to play a little bit better now.
Yeah, I agree. Again, we'll get into a little bit more of this. I think the league is definitely in an upswing, and I think it's changing right now. So that's the playoffs. So for now, we're going to step away. I personally had the opportunity to go to the den of the very own Nostrashaunus. I met him in his home. I sat down with him, and we had, and I interviewed him, asked him some poignant questions. He's the champion. He's the dynasty in the league. So we got an interview with him. We'll step away and see what he had to say.
Awesome. Wish I could have been there for that.
Hello, listeners. I am lucky enough to be here in the home of the one and only Nostrashaunus. To run down some of his accolades, he has won the championship out of 15 years in this league. He's won the championship 4 times. He essentially averages the championship about every 4 years. He is on top of the list of championships with 4. His team is also rated as Diamond, which is as high as you can be rated and the highest ranking and rating within the league. So I'm pleased to be sitting down with Nostrashaunus. Nostrashaunus, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, Floyd. I am very comfortable with fantasy football. I'm very uncomfortable with this. I will do the best I can.
Have you done any other interviews? Are this an exclusive?
It is an excuse. So I've declined a couple. I've had some people reach out to me. And honestly, if it wasn't going to be the forum coming to me, I wasn't going to do one. So, like I said, not my cup of tea, but I will open my door for you guys.
Are you a fan of the forum? You listen?
I listen. My family listens. I have a little daughter. I'm telling you, she listens to it all the time. She can't get enough of you guys. You guys are great.
Good.
It's funny. I hate it that the Greek's not here today because people always tell me that I kind of look like him, I kind of sound like him, so I would have liked to got a picture taken with him or something, but it's all right.
I don't see it, but I've heard people say that as well.
Well, I heard he's a good-looking guy.
So, just a couple questions for you. So, you lose the first game of the season, and you lose to not someone that's a perennial power, but definitely someone that's always a threat to win it. Bad guys. How did that how did you feel coming out of week one?
You know what? That's funny. Most people would think that I came out of week one and I was a little, discouraged. But you know what? The funny thing about this league is, if you actually look, you play the same people every year. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. I don't know what it is, but we have the same schedule every year. So every year, at least for the past 5 years, I have played Bad Guys week 1 and I've played WNS Equals week 2. And the funny part is, Bad Guys has beaten me every week, the week 1 for the past 3 years. And honestly, I've been on a little bit of a run of success right here. So I had a weird thing where I actually was hoping I would lose week 1 this year. Because I was, in my mind, like, you know what? I'm going to lose again like I did the previous year. And I'm going to go on a run and try to win another title.
And that's exactly what happened. So you literally go from last to first and win the championship. Tell us a little bit about that journey, about some of the struggles you had, some of the luck maybe you ran into, those types of things.
Well, I mean, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a long way from week 1 to that championship week. And one of the first things I would say is every year in those first couple weeks, there's always a waiver wire pickup that ends up being a valuable player for a championship team.
Absolutely.
And for me this year, I was able to get that Phillip Lindsay. I got him week 1. And he ended up being a top 10 running back. Think about that. A top 10, I think he ended up being 8th or 9th in terms of points scored for running backs through the year. Got him on the waiver wire after week 1. I mean, didn't even draft him. So I always feel like, you got to try to find someone off the waiver wire. I found him off the waiver wire. Another thing I found on the waiver wire around week 7, I picked up the Bears defense. And I rode that for about 5 or 6 weeks. And then I ultimately ended up trading them. But long story short, it was another good waiver wire pickup. But I'll tell you, I had some injuries this year. I lost Jimmy Garoppolo week 3, and that was just going to be my number 2 quarterback all year. Nice and easy, nice and smooth.
And as we talk about at the forum, in this league, quarterbacks are king.
Quarterbacks are king.
That's unusual for most leagues, but in this league they're king because they can play, or the teams can play two quarterbacks.
Floyd, that's one of the things I love about this league. This league is kind of evolved. It's a little bit ahead of the curve. I mean, you play in a lot of these leagues where it's one quarterback, right?
Yeah.
You'll have, let's think out loud for a second. Who's the 14th or 15th best quarterback? I just remember Tony Romo. When Tony Romo was in his heyday, in a weird way, he was around that 13th. So in fantasy leagues, Tony Romo doesn't play every week.
Right.
I love how this league has evolved. It's a little ahead of the curve. And just like something like that, where you have the option of playing that second quarterback, just shows you. That's one of the reasons I love this league so much. I enjoy being in it because it's a little better than, your run-of-the-mill fantasy leagues.
Now, I was going to take the interview in a little different direction, but since you kind of mentioned that, I'm going to go this way. So you're, whether we want to accept it or not, if you talk about the NFL, let's say, Bill Belichick, what he says matters more than what Lovie Smith says when Lovie Smith's coaching. You know what I mean? I mean, just because they're the winners.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So let me ask you, what do you see some moves maybe or changes that the league might have coming down the pike or should?
Well, the one thing that the league has changed that I love is they've gone to a live draft now.
Yes.
They just started last year. I used to play in a couple fantasy leagues. I used to play in about 3 or 4 fantasy leagues. I can play in one now. This one does it for me. It's the best league out there. That's why I play it. I focus all my attention on it. Now that they've gone to the actual live draft, I just love it. I think it's one of those things where, the commissioner said it. I mean, it makes the good players better, and it makes the players aren't as good try a little harder. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I love the live draft. I would like to see some sort of implementation of rules where people can't just trade off their teams. I don't like the teams that fire sell. And on the flip side of that, I don't like teams that try to buy a championship. So I would like to see, I'm going to try to push some sort of legislation at the next draft where we get something put in place where there's a cap on how many times you can buy and sell and make trades through the year.
Interesting.
Yeah. I feel very strongly about that.
This year, the forum is going to be at the draft. We're going to cover it and have a podcast on that.
Hopefully, I get to meet the Greek then. That would be cool.
So we talked about your successes. Just real quick on the season, give me your biggest mistake.
My biggest, Christian McCaffrey. I swear to God, I thought it was going to come back and bite me in the butt. I'm saying I traded Christian McCaffrey. I got way too cute. I saw cheeseheads. I see cheeseheads. You see it, right? 2019, cheeseheads, it's coming. Well, you know what? I was just like, I'm going to do everything in my damn power to get 2018, get championship. And I got too cute. I made too many moves. And Christian McCaffrey, I traded him away. And I swear, every week after I traded him, he scored 20 to 30 points every week. And then when I see it's not a tumor against me in the championship, doesn't it just feel like, I don't know, it's just like I felt like the Roosters were going to come over to roost. So that was one thing I regretted. I definitely should have, I probably should have held on to McCaffrey, and therefore I wouldn't have had to make the Gurley move. So there's a domino effect where I actually, I'd have that number 2 next year. So that's the one thing I regret because I could have won it with McCaffrey.
Now, everyone knows that Cheeseheads heads into next year a heavy favored. But what I want to ask you is, who's the biggest threat to you to tie that 4th championship?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, obviously, without a doubt, I don't have it right in front of me, but so the league, I have 4 now, and Hulk Heaven and WNS have 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else has 3. Okay. Wow. I will say that the person that it's probably Hulk Heaven. Okay. Because just in the short term, just because I just know that next year WNS, I think he gave away a 3rd or 4th round pick next year.
Okay.
So next year, even moving forward a little bit, I just know WNS, they're good. Man, they're both so good.
But WNS as well. When you think about WNS, sorry to interrupt you, but
no, that's all right. It's your show.
Just as we mentioned before, you've been in the league 15 years.
15
WNS Eagles has been in the league 6 years, 7 years,
maybe 7 or 8.
Okay,
I don't have
and have 3 championships in that time.
Yeah,
so
we don't have to tell everybody that, okay?
He's winning a championship in less than every 3 years.
Oh, yes.
You're winning it every 4. Hulk Evans winning it every 5.
Now I have
on average.
Now WNS, as much as I respect him, I feel like I am his equal. And in the 5, so basically I've won 4, but I've actually been in 5 Super Bowls. I've been in 5 championships. So I put me at 1 every 3 years. So, but WNS Eagles, he's the real deal. Man, that guy's working on it right now. I guarantee you.
So. From a fan's perspective, I think you're right. I think Hog Heaven probably has a better chance next year than WNS Eagles does.
Yeah.
But
in the long run,
I think as the fans, as we look on this league, I feel WNS Eagles is your rival.
He is. And it's just like I don't even want to say it out loud right now. Because you know what? At the end of the day, I know that nobody is working harder than WNS Eagles. And it's like you don't even want to admit it. Like you made me. I said it out loud. I don't want to say it out loud. I'm already thinking about what he's thinking about for the draft next year. I know that Hulk Heaven is solid as a rock. That guy is the epitome of just like a strong oak tree foundation team, right? But I feel like in July and August, he's not checking to see who the 2 deep is on the Jets. He's not checking to see who that crazy 3rd receiver is for the Rams. That's who we all want. We want the number 3 receiver for the Rams over we want the number 1 receiver for the Bills. I mean, that's the things that WNS Eagles is thinking about that I know that hardly anybody else is thinking about.
Appreciate your time, Nostrashaunus. Do you have anything you want to throw out there to the public?
Well, I'd like to first say that how much I respect the league. I love the league. Like I said, I used to play in numerous leagues. Now I only play in this league. I realize how good the top of this league is, and I also realize even the people that right now are at the bottom, how hard they're working. So I respect the championship in this league, and it's not lost on me how hard it is to get one of these. So thanks for having me. I would like to say I have the number 1 pick in the draft next year. I would love nothing more to start fielding offers for that number 1 pick. But this year I will hold on to it a little more tightly. I feel like Mahomes and Gurley are fantasy gold, and the asking price will probably be a little higher than it usually is. But no, the number 1 pick is on the block, and more than anything, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So there you have it, league members and forum listeners. Number 1 draft pick is on the block, an exclusive that you find nowhere else in the Fantasy Football Forum. Thanks, Nostrashaunus.
Thank you.
Well, there we have it, Greek. I got to sit down with Nostrashaunus.
I'm still a little bitter about that. I would like to meet him, like to meet the champ. But the way that guy's going, I'll get to meet him next year.
Yep. He said that he would like to meet you at the draft, so maybe so. Well, we didn't do this outside of studio, but we have a very special guest we're bringing in. We announced it in the previous episode.
I'm a little nervous.
We announced it in the previous episode. We're going to bring in the commissioner of the league, Mr. Jeremiah Keller. Welcome to the studio. Welcome, Jeremiah. How are you doing today?
I am very good, Floyd.
Or should I call you Commissioner, Mr. Keller?
Jeremiah's fine. We're all friends. Actually, Keller would probably work the best because anybody that knows me, Keller's what I go by.
Okay.
Because, we're a 12-team league, and I think I know, we all met at the live draft, so I know all 12 of you.
So, this is what we're going to do. I've got some questions that were emailed into us. I'm going to ask you a couple of those. I have a couple questions of my own. So we're going to have kind of an impromptu interview with you, talk a little bit about the league, and then we're going to keep you in studio if you have time to stick around. Do you have a heart out?
No, I think I can stay around if you got another segment for me.
Okay, and we're going to have we're just going to kind of cover the all 3 of us together cover the state of the league, what we look like going into the draft next year, that type of thing. So, all right. Again, had a couple questions that were sent in. So, This question comes from Dim Sum, the team Dim Sum.
Okay.
He writes in and says, how can members see the current draft order and other statistical information on the league?
If you go to Yahoo and to your fantasy, and I don't know where it is, but it's up on the toolbar. I don't have it in front of me. I don't have the website pulled up in front of me. I'm sorry. If you go to the toolbar, you can see draft for next year. You can see your draft status.
So it's available on the website.
It's available.
Is it available on the mobile site?
That I don't know, because I
think that's probably the key to that question.
He's a mobile user.
If you are a mobile user, I think that at some point in the off season or during the season, if you're wanting to see detailed statistical information, you need to go on the actual Yahoo website, I think is...
Yes, that's correct. As the commissioner, honestly, I go to my Yahoo website on my PC every morning to check out what's going on in the fantasy world. I actually do it in the off season. It's easier to work it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the mobile site.
There's definitely it's definitely more user friendly and more access.
Yes, and if at this point everyone has a smartphone, not everyone has a PC. So if you need that information, you can always text me. I mean, my number's out there. Everybody has my number.
Mm-hmm.
You can text me that information. I will give it to you within a day. If you ask, text me and say, hey, what's this information? I will get that information to you within 24 to 48 hours. Because I have another job. This one doesn't pay that much.
Okay.
So, but also you can just go to your local library, get on your PC, log into your Yahoo, get on your fantasy. And I know it takes a little time, but that's how you can find out that information.
I think everybody has a PC at that.
Well, I don't know they do. I don't know. I know.
Alrighty, next question. This question comes in from Anonymous. It says, we all know in the sports world, you never want to be the man that replaces the man. And you have been given the hard task of replacing the man that has often been referred to as the Pete Rozelle in history of Buckeye Fantasy League. Has this challenge been harder than you thought it would be, replacing the former commissioner? And what have you tried to do during your tenure to put your stamp on the league?
That was a good question.
It's been very difficult to replace a commissioner of 9 years that had established himself, that had ran the league about as well as you can. Seamlessly, yeah. Good. Thank you for the word.
I think it was 12 years.
Oh, it was 12 years? Yeah. Okay, it was 12. Yeah, it's in my third year. I'm sorry. Yep. We're a 15-year league. It was 12 years. Over the 12 years...
that difference between that 12 and 9 could cut into his pension, so that's very important we get that correct.
But over the course of 12 years, and I've been paying attention to what the league has been doing for the full 15 years. Mm-hmm. I seen early mistakes that were made by the previous commissioner, and by year, I would say 7 through 12, everything he done was on par, was correct. Those were big shoes to fill. I have been trying to work on my communication with the rest of the league, in which our previous commissioner had done really well.
Yes.
He put out weekly winners. He put out tidbits. He would put out trade deadlines. He would put out numerous information that I have yet to master as the new commissioner, and I understand that's my shortcomings.
That'll take time.
And that's what I'm working on that. Yeah. You're right. I've been working on that.
I agree. And I did hear that I never got my hands on one of these, but the actual previous commissioner had a newsletter he sent out. And I heard that this was one of the wittiest. There was some of the wittiest stuff I've ever heard. I wish I could get my hands on one of these, but these things were hilarious. But no, I've heard nothing but good things about the new commish. And I will say that I've heard just through the grapevine that the one thing that the previous guy didn't do that this guy did is he got the live draft.
Well, that was
that's game changer.
That was my next thing that I was actually going to bring up was the things that I think that I bring to the table that our previous commissioner didn't. I worked hard, and it was a very long process to get us the mileage between all our league members to bring together a live draft, which I think strengthened our league.
And that was going to be one of my questions that I was going to bring up. So I had the opportunity to sit down with Nostrashaunus, obviously the dynasty in the league right now, and he said that was one of the best changes that he's seen in the league. So the way you're speaking, we will see a continued live draft with this league.
Yes, as long as I'm commissioner, I will do everything in my power to continue with the live draft. I think it makes our league stronger. I think it makes the stronger players stronger, and the weaker players try to be better. And I know we've all heard that before, but that's, it's
that was the
truth.
tweet that came out of the live draft. That was one of your quotes.
It's the truth. I mean,
so
I love the live draft.
Next year's live draft is going to be scheduled.
Yes, the next year's live draft. I was going to bring this up, but yeah, since you've addressed it already, next year, the NFL season starts the Thursday after Labor Day,
mm-hmm.
and Labor Day is a very hard weekend for everybody to try to get away.
Agreed.
To get to a live draft. Next year's live draft, we're going to do the week before, which will be August 24th.
That's a Saturday.
That's Saturday.
August 24th will be next year's live draft. Everyone in the league is getting a multiple month notice of when we're going to have our live draft. It will be August 24th again is when we will have our live draft again next year for Buckeyes League.
I think as from a reporting standpoint, I had heard some grumbles that it came out of the league with it being on a Sunday, and some people, a smart move from the commissioner.
Yes, well, Sunday last year was unavoidable. The reason we had it on Sunday was because of our location. Our location could not accommodate a Saturday last year.
Okay.
So
is your location changing?
Yes, we last year. Let me back up for a second, okay? Because we have some important information that I didn't get to about last year's draft and about this year's upcoming draft.
Okay.
Which I think is important information. First of all, we have corporate sponsorship that we need to get this out there. This is very important information. Last year we had our draft at Jack's Steakhouse.
Mm-hmm.
We would like to thank Big Limbs for corporate sponsoring the location and the beer that he. I'm not going to lie to you.
I did hear. I wasn't there, but I did hear a rumor that you had a few beers there.
I had quite a few.
Really?
But we would like to thank our first corporate sponsor is Jack's Steakhouse. Jack's Steakhouse. We love the fact that he opened up his restaurant to us last year. That's why we couldn't have it on Saturday. I mean, if you really think about it, Saturday is a business day for a restaurant.
Absolutely.
Sunday afternoon was a little slower.
Gotcha.
He opened up his doors to us, and we would like to thank him for that. We had a couple other corporate sponsors, too, that I have to mention. We had Victor Herman Enterprises, who donated the time clock last year for the draft. And Victor Herman was right on top of resetting and maintaining time. And that was very important for our draft. That holds the integrity of the draft.
Thank you, Victor.
Our last corporate sponsor last year was Keller Brothers, who donated the whiteboard and the markers for draft orders. So those were our three corporate sponsors last year, and we would like to thank them for their cooperation and helping out with the league.
That was very nice of you. Now, I will say Keller Brothers is so big that we can all agree that it's a write-off.
You don't even know what a write-off is.
Do you?
Let's just write it off.
Write it off, Jake.
But next year, on August 24th, as we've said, we're going to try to move the draft to a Saturday. We are moving the draft to Floyd Fry, who is Hulk Heaven, his garage in Lancaster, Ohio. I do not have the actual address, and you will forget it anyway.
I have it here. I have all the address of the league. It is 1625 Lexington Drive, Lancaster, Ohio. And I'm assuming that you will be putting that out to the league.
Yes, I will. That will be going out on the group text. Like I said, we'd like to thank Jack's Steakhouse for last year allowing us to have it there. But I know we all got a little loud, and we got a little vulgar, and it just reached the time that we need to go to a private location.
Too many F words.
Too many F words from the commissioner.
Yes. And it's not a tumor.
Okay. Finally, wrapping up the interview portion of this, Mr. Keller. What do you think of the state of the league, and what do you see any changes coming down the pike? Well,
I think that the league is as strong as it's ever been. As was previously stated, we had 9 single-week winners out of a 13-week season. So, that's only 4. Yep, do the math. That's only 4 teams that may not have won a single week. So, if you do, that tells us the strength of the league.
Yep.
We had, up until week 12, or week 13, I'm sorry, up until actually week 13, the draft order and who was, or not the draft order, I'm sorry, the playoff order and who was in the playoffs was not set. We went until the last week of the league.
Yeah, we talked about that. Greek and I talked about that exclusively.
To determine who was in, who was out, what the seeding was. I also feel we had players this year that made moves that traditionally are not players that make moves in our league.
Yep, we talked about that as well.
Yep, some people evolving.
People building for next year, people trying to produce for this year. I think that tells our league is strength.
Certainly.
And with a live draft.
Absolutely.
I mean, with the live draft, I think that is, one thing that we've done that makes us a stronger league.
Absolutely. I agree. All right. Let's move on to kind of wrap up for the year. Let's talk a little bit about, what we thought of the season. If anybody has any other thoughts on that, what do we think going into next season? That type of thing. You got something, Greek?
I have one last question for the commissioner, and we're in the actual interview realm of the question. Could you please spell Garoppolo? I had a question just came in through a text, and someone just said, please ask the commissioner to spell Garoppolo.
I probably couldn't spell Garoppolo.
It's spelled 49ers quarterback.
All right. What do you have just on the league moving forward going into next year? I mean, what's your take, Commish, on from the commissioner's side on how this looks with an unprecedented draft coming with Cheeseheads?
Well, I think that Cheeseheads is definitely going to be strong. I feel going into next year they're probably going to win. So if we're going back to that, I think they're going to win many single week points.
Mm-hmm.
I have no doubt that in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he's probably trying to buy a championship for next year.
Mm-hmm.
But as history has told us,
that doesn't always.
That does not work. That doesn't always work. You have your semi. He could go out in the semifinals. I think it's strong to say that he will make the playoffs.
Greek, what's your take on this theory, Greek? That if people see that Cheeseheads is so dominant over the first 3-4 weeks, that all of a sudden we have a fire sale.
Oh, that's why I think that it will be important for that league next year to get something on the books where people can't do fire sales anymore. Because I think that's one of the worst things that can happen is you have about 2 teams that look and they see, oh shit, we can't catch Cheeseheads, so I'm just going to sell for next year. Then you got 2 other teams doing exactly what Cheeseheads did this year.
Yeah, I think so.
You got to cap it.
I think this league is in danger of having multiple people that are playing every other year.
Yes, and how hard is it if you play every other year? Because see, what a lot of people don't realize, like let's say I go into this draft with 4, I sold the year before, I come in with 4 extra picks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, hell, if I'm playing every other year, not only do I have those 4 extra picks, once the season starts, I'll sell it the following year. So I'll get 3 to 4 more. So I'm basically playing with an extra 7 or 8 players. I mean, that's like shooting fish in a barrel.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say this. So far, when people have done the heavy buy and the heavy sell, I think that, you call me crazy, I do believe in fantasy gods, and I think the fantasy gods have never let one of those actually win a championship yet. So there actually has not been a full-blown fire sale or a full-blown buy actually win the championship.
I would agree with you 100% on that. If you look at our champions and our dynasties and mini dynasties, we have Nostrashaunus. He's got his 4. We got Hulk Heaven, who has never been a buyer or a seller until this year. This is the first year that's what I was talking about.
Daddy got a credit card.
This is the first year he's really made moves. We look at the WNS Eagles. He makes moves every year, but they're always smart moves. Yeah. They are, I'm buying, I'm selling, I'm buying, I'm selling. Those are not giveaway moves for the next year.
No.
We have,
well, you can go back as early as 2014, 2015, whatever it was, the Hog Heaven was undefeated. There was a sweetness team that year that had sold the farm.
Yes.
And was on paper was by far the best team in the league. Hog Heaven was undefeated. That's all we need to say.
You'll play the games.
I think that's one of those crazy years when the semifinals, that sweetness team scored like 170 points or something crazy.
Yeah.
And then it didn't. No, actually, they got upset in the semis, and if they would have played in the final week, would have scored 170 points. That's what it was, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely.
So.
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
Anything else you guys want to riff on?
Well, I guess for me, when I look at the draft next year, I look at there's 3 teams that kind of are ready to go and 3 teams that are going to have an uphill battle. And those 3 teams, the aforementioned Cheeseheads, we all agree, Cheeseheads. But there are 2 other teams. Uncle Buck and Dim Sum have extra picks coming into the draft. So you actually have 3 people that actually have considerable, draft hauls coming in. On the flip side of that, the 3 team Sweetness, he's missing 3 of his top 10. WNS Eagles, like I said, I don't have it from me. He's missing a 3 or a 4. And I know Nostrashaunus did a lot of moving, a lot of buying and selling last year, but at the end of the day, he's not going to have a full draft. So Nostrashaunus not only trying to be cheeseheads next year, he won't even have a full draft. So those are 3 teams that have an advantage and 3 teams that are at a disadvantage going into that draft next year.
Agreed. Anything else on the state of the league, Commish?
I just hope that we have full participation in the live draft next year with plenty of warning.
Mm-hmm.
I know we had circumstances.
Things happen.
First year.
Yes, first year. We're trying to build off the live draft. This year was good. Next year, I hope it's better. I hope in 3 years it'll be great for our live draft with participation, with draft day trading. We had a few this year. I think as the league evolves and people understand how things work, we will have more draft day trading, which I think actually makes the league stronger. So, if we continue to evolve, we're going to be better and better and better league, and people will actually. So, just think about that.
Yeah, like last year was the first year of the live draft, and you had 11 out of 12 participants there, which actually that on alone is good. But I've heard from some back channel people. I've got some resources with Chris from State Farm, and I've already heard from Assurance he's 100% there next year. So I don't think you have anything to worry about with having a full draft board next year. I think you're going to be good to go, and definitely kind of curious to see what happens at the Fry residence.
That's what I'm hoping. It's going to be a new location, new venue, get a little louder. See what happens.
Alrighty. Fantastic, guys. Well, here at the Fantasy Football Forum, as you know, we've hitched our wagon to the Buckeyes Fantasy League, and we're proud to say that we have. So, until next year, I'm Floyd. He's the Greek. Thank you, Commish. Next year, we'll see you guys later.